Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel review anything and everything. And today we're getting into another Jurassic World Rebirth figure review. This is the Aucasaurus, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't know if I am. Now, this dinosaur, if you've been familiar with some of the dinosaurs that we reviewed on the channel in the past, this dinosaur will look familiar to, I want to say, I'm having a brain fart on what the name of it was. I want to say it's the Majungasaurus. I believe it was the Majungasaurus. And there was another one. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He is gray, and he was probably the first one to come out with this kind of body style, and he looks very similar to a Carnotaurus. So this not only looks similar to those same ones, but this one is also related to the Carnotaurus family line. First, let's jump into the box a little bit, and then later on, we're going to get into the measurements of the figure and the details of the figure. And you can see he's got those arms very similar to the Carnotaurus, and not the Carnotaurus from this line, from Jurassic World line, because their one has small, the Hammond Collection one is one I'm referring to, has small arms, but not as small, but the other one that I'm telling you about, Dinosaur, something like that. I know I'm butchering it, but it has very similar arms and very similar body style. But this one has a very substantial tail. We'll get into that in a moment. So it shows the movement is up and down, but then also on the back, and I always tell you guys to look out for this, they'll show you the double types of movements you can do. There's the up and down, and there's the twist. So it has two different actions that come along with it. These are the ones that come along in the line, and I actually am going to review that one coming up soon, and that one coming up right after. So push that to the side. Some people have made note to say that, being that this is part of the Carnotaurus family, that this was colored in the paint scheme of the Carnotaurs or the Carnotauruses in the movie Dinosaur by Disney or Pixar. I'm not sure if that was, I know it was Disney, but I don't know if Pixar and Disney were joined at the hip at that time or not. But anyway, people are saying that it's kind of giving a nod to that because the colors are similar to that, yet it is part of that same family. You got a little bit of these crests coming up here, not the bull horns, obviously, like the Carnotaurus, but saying that it's part of the same family. You can tell with the hands. Now, one thing they did away with is the turning of the ankles. And I don't have a problem with that because, one, it allows that you don't have to worry about them getting loose. And two, I think the main purpose of you having those was to help for stability when it comes to standing. But you could see here that he stands without a problem, so that's not a big deal. This portion of the tail was applied after the fact. But what's interesting is most of the time, the secondary part of the tail might either be like here, or say if it was this long, it would attach to a base that starts here. These together form a very substantially long tail, to the point where it's actually more than 2/3 the body length. And we're gonna go into the measurements in a second, but I just wanna go over the rest of the figure, and then I'm gonna go and measure out the rest of the tail. I'm gonna rest the whole body, but then I'm gonna measure out the tail and just kind of see how much of its length is just in the tail. So remind me of that later. Just kidding. So here you can see he gets that treatment that all of the main line gets now. At this point now, it's just a given that this is the case, so we're gonna have to bring it up, but it's nice to point it out, being that we're still coming from the generation of the era where you didn't have this with the teeth. Separate mold that feels more realistic with the bone color type of teeth. And he has a nice little tongue with the little, pattern on it, the little beads, the texture, which fit for like a tongue to be. Smooth on the top. You have obviously the jaw muscles there. Nice little painting here. You got the little piece of the app there. I actually forgot to scan this, so I haven't done that yet because my kids are the ones who rip these things open, and I didn't get a chance to scan it. Usually I scan it when I'm with them, but I didn't get a chance to because they were playing. Got little patterns over here on the top, nothing crazy. You got the painting coming from the bottom of the throat here and bottom of the neck. It doesn't come down to here, which is interesting. I think they could have done that, but I'm not one of those sticklers about these kind of things. The eyes look nice. You got a little bit of paint up there. And as far as the feature goes, It's easier if I do it this way for me. It's got sound included and goes up. Now, one thing that some people said they had a little bit of an issue with is why does it have to start with its mouth open? And I agree. Sometimes it's better when the mouth is closed and the action is what opens the mouth. So those are the features going up and down. Then you have the turning feature. And you can combine them both in a smooth action, which is nice because there's been a few dinosaurs that do stuff like this. It doesn't come straight to my mind right now. I know that there was the Epic Roaring T-Rex had that whole thing where it had the motion to go kind of up and down and spin around. So it had a full motion. The, which one is that? The Camouflage Indominus Rex, it could turn. It didn't have full fluid motion, but it can turn while you're doing chomping with a button. So it kind of gave this semi kind of doing two actions at one time. But what's nice is it gives you that full range of motion with the head. Unfortunately, that's not what's controlling the bite, but it still looks nice if you have that. Sorry that it's hard for me to not have my hands in the way when I show that. But I like to give you that full range of motion right there. So also we're going to bring in a figure into the mix for scale. Let me push it back a little bit so you guys can see it a little better. And he's now aligned up correctly with him. Hopefully he'll stand. Lately I cannot find my kid's Owen figure. Who I used to use, and there's no difference between the two, but then I can't say what this guy's name is because I never learned his name. He is from the Jurassic World series, so I guess it's more fitting that he is from the Jurassic World series, but he doesn't stand up as easy. So there you go. I am sorry that I don't have the camera angle exactly at level. I'm not going to go through that right now, but as far as his general size compared to him, you can see, like I said, he's this dinosaur, Aucasaurus, if I'm pronouncing that right, he's very long, very interesting. I really like this figure. But just to give you a sense of the height next to him, so even if it's not coming out on camera, that scale, this dinosaur, the top of his head is about 4 3/4 inches. And this guy is obviously 3, it's supposed to be meant to be 3 3/4. So though he's looking like he's a little taller than that, but he's supposed to be, yeah, he's like 3 3/4. So, what you're getting is about a full inch above him in height. So even on this level, it may not appear that way. It might be a little bit distorted. He is a full inch taller than him. So we have him at 4 3/4. Oops, accidentally knocked him over here. I'm gonna move this guy out the way so I can get this measurement in correctly. We wanna see what his length is. He's coming in at, mind you, his tail is a little curved, but he's coming in at 13 inches, which is actually pretty good. That tail is very long. Like I said before, I want to measure the tail to see how much of that 13 inches is just in the tail. And we're getting 5.5 inches, which is definitely more than a third of his length. It's probably almost 40% of his length, something in that range. He's 13 inches, so half would be 6.5. It would be 50% is 6.5, and he's got like a 5-inch tail. So yeah, it's something in that range. I can't do the exact math over the top of my head, but it's probably close to like 40%. 5.5 is the length on there. So yes, he's a very long figure. And what's interesting is maybe this is just true to the form of how the dinosaur really is. I don't know of the dinosaur as far as like knowing of him outside of this context. But what I will say is, I just want to get that measurement one more time because I'm about to do the scaling in terms of feet. But what I will say is that some dinosaurs tend to have these long tails, and maybe they're meant to be that way. And some of them have shorter tails, which still look nice. They don't have to be as long as this, but this reminds me of Allosaurus. Where Allosaurus is one of those kind of dinosaurs where they have a very long tail, where some dinosaurs still look proportionate with a less lengthy tail. Now this dinosaur, his tail could have cut off maybe about 1.5 inches from the tip, and it still would have looked like a pretty good, length tail and would have been fitting. But like I said, some dinosaurs just have extra long tails. So for the length here, after doing the conversion, he is considered 20.8 feet long, and his height, we had him at 4 3/4. And that puts him at 7.6 feet long. So 7.6 feet long and 20.8 feet. I'm sorry, 7.6 feet tall and 20.8 feet long. So if you guys were to, like I said, I don't know the dinosaur, but if you guys were to look it up online or Wikipedia and, you know, see how big he is, you could compare to see how much this one scales with it. Now, I always say I give a little grace because a lot of those measurements, when we look at them on Wikipedia or you Google them or whatever on a dinosaur, are often depicting the full size of what they could be, not necessarily the average size. And some of these dinosaurs, when you compare them in scale, might be a little bit shorter in length, maybe the same height as most of them usually have the good height range. But the length, they're usually a little shorter. And like I said, that might go back to that tail stuff we were just talking about. But nonetheless, they all kind of fall within a range that it would still be a suitable range, maybe more the average height and not the largest size of the dinosaur. But it usually falls within a good realistic size scope. And so I'm saying that to say, if you look at this dinosaur up and he happens to be naturally, say something like 25 to 30 feet long, and maybe he's 8 to 10 feet tall, that is a bit more larger than this one, but nonetheless it still falls within the range that this could be like more the average or closer to the smaller size. But it may very well be that that is the actual size of the dinosaur. There's been a few dinosaurs who have been equal to their size, or maybe even a little bit bigger of the actual toy version than the actual version, though most of the time the toy version is a little bit smaller, particularly when it comes to T-Rex, is a decent amount smaller in its length and height versus what's depicted in, you know, if you look them up. Though I will say one thing that's always been funny with the T-Rex though is that you always get different measurements based on the hips versus based on the actual height of maybe the head, and you'd see things say 18 feet, some of them say 14 at the hip, so you never really know where they're measuring from when they're talking about the actual size. But check this one out online, see what his actual size is and see how he compares. As always, you guys, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.